Everyone. Delighted on this episode to be having a conversation with someone whose name I've heard quite often in indie comics, and that is Fish Lee or Mr. Fish Comics. Should I call you Mr. Fish Comics? Is that okay?
Yeah, Mr. Fish is fine. That's what everybody calls me
All
from
right.
like 3 to 98.
That works. That totally works. On this episode, we're talking about Fish Tales Volume 2. I have to tell you, I love the cover. I love the mixture of like the hand reaching in, very creative, very almost Dave Pilkey like interacting
Oh
with
yeah.
the scene. I love that. But very much a different audience from Dave Pilkey. Like, I will point that out in case younger viewers are watching.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely is.
yeah, yeah. So before we talk about the anthology approach and your inspiration that way, what got you into this world of indie comics?
Man, it really kind of feels like my whole life was aimed at indie comics because like so much awesome stuff happened early in my life. Like I grew up on cartoons like the Super Friends and Thundar the Barbarian and
Hmm. Hmm.
He-Man and Thundercats and all that cool stuff, Silverhawks, Tiger Sharks, like all these cool things were coming out at that time, just spurring my imagination. Star Wars, Star Trek, everything was just planting these seeds in my brain that just grew to fruition. It's like, oh, well, what if we did this? What if we did that? And what if we did
Uh-huh.
that?
Uh-huh.
And, my playing with my action figures was always epic storytelling, and who was going to die and, who was going to overthrow the kingdom and stuff. And I loved it. And, and I came of like age, I grew up and learned about, other things besides this when like the black and white TMNT comic blew up and I saw a copy in the bookstore like a mile from my house that I could walk to, and that just blew my mind that people were out there doing just whatever weird thing they wanted to do. And I found
Hmm.
out about like Judge Dredd and Grendel and Cerebus and all this cool stuff that was out there, and I was done for, dude. But the thing that really got me, the thing that really put the nail in the coffin was kind of early. It was, I think, the first episode of Scooby-Doo and Scrappy, like, their first little adventure, cartoon. And the
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
first episode, I believe, was one where they were saving a comic book artist from his own hero that had gone rogue and was robbing banks and whatnot. Uh, and that's when I realized you could draw superheroes for a living and like have a job and an office and all of this cool stuff. I was done. Like I nail in the
Yeah.
coffin. I was going to be a comic artist. There was no real question about it after that.
Love it, love it. Yeah. Yeah, you were, of course, referencing so many things from my childhood there as well. I mean, of course, it was to sell action figures. We know this now, but man, I had such a good time with all of those things. And I would tell stories with the action figures. I mean, it was just a good branding time of life. It really was.
It really and the thing that I loved the most was the open-endedness that it gave us before the cartoons came in. Like, the way my imagination could run wild with He-Man from those first couple of commercials and the couple little comic books that came in the back. My That
Mhm.
will always be my favorite fundamental version of He-Man when he's just a barbarian that gets this awesome armor that makes him even stronger. Like that's the part that really sunk into my brain and made my imagination flow. I loved the cartoon. I mean, I ate it up with a spoon. I loved everything but Orko.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I hate comic relief. Oh my God. But I loved it. But man, the barbarian, dude, that was so much cooler than a dude that looks exactly like He-Man being, I'm Prince Adam. I just
Yeah.
I couldn't buy it. But oh man, the Barbarian was awesome. But it just, things like Boba Fett, he was the coolest character because he had the fewest lines and we knew the least about him, so our imagination could run wild.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's the stuff I enjoyed was when something gave us room for our imaginations to fill in the blanks. And, that's where my mind went crazy.
Yeah, yeah. So take us on the journey from kind of the inspiration, the initial steps to the work you're now doing in Fish Tales.
Man. That's been a wild, long ride. That has been a wild, long ride. Actually, the only reason, like, it's always been my dream to work in comics. I didn't go to college originally because why do I need to? I'm moving to New York to work in comics. Turns out it was a lot harder to get into than I thought it was. And so I go back and I go to college and I get a degree, and then, I get other local jobs, and yep, life takes over. I ended up getting completely crippled by a neurological disorder I didn't even know I had as a kid. I ended up spending 15 years in a wheelchair, unable to walk, talk, and see most days. I couldn't feed myself most of the time because it turns out my brain misfires all of the time and sends random crazy signals out and causes me to tick and jerk and move. And um, I didn't know when all this started getting really bad that it was called Tourette syndrome, because all I knew was like what you see in the movies. And, I wasn't screaming out obscenities. I couldn't walk. And turns out it's the same thing. And, it doesn't always look like it does in the movies. That's a really easy, funny version to show. And so I ended up with this mystery illness that put me in a wheelchair for a while. We finally figured out what it was. And over the years, I tried some different treatments. I learned how to surf the waves of the ticks and not try and fight against them. Like, you can't stand in the ocean and fight off the waves, but if you learn to surf them, it's a lot easier. And I learned to live with it. I learned the things that my body needs, like enough rest and enough exercise and stuff to be in better shape, and found a good mix of medications, and things get a little bit easier and I get a little less shaky and a little less shaky. And then it got to the point where, like, I could try and do a little work again. And so I started reaching out anywhere I could. Like, I used to be a graphic designer. I used to do logos and signs and t-shirts and all kinds of stuff. And I tried everywhere I could think of to try and get a day job somewhere in graphic design. Nobody wants to hire the guy that might be able to drive on Monday, and maybe he can't drive to work on Tuesday, and maybe he can't talk on the phone Wednesday. And, maybe he's going to be back in a wheelchair next year. Who knows? And nobody wanted to take a chance on that. So I literally was stuck with no option but rebuilding a freelance career from the ground up, like I had built before everything fell apart. And I was like, well, I could go back into logo design, or I could, start a YouTube channel and start sculpting, cool figures and stuff, and maybe eventually get a list of commissions that could pay the bills. But sculptures take up a lot of room, and I was like, my true love is comic books. My true love is storytelling. That's what I love more than anything. That's what I've always wanted to do with my life. So I was like, what the hell? I got nowhere to go but up. So let's give it a shot. And I just crossed the 6 year mark that I've been working in indie comics. I just got a Facebook update from 6 years ago when I had completed my first job in indie comics, which was inking a little bitty indie comic that probably 60 people read. And I met one of my best friends on that job who was a letterer, and we've been friends ever since. He's like the reason I have a career today, because he tried me out on some commissions and he loved it and he showed them off to his friends. And then he hired me for a little 8-page story to illustrate and color for him and everything. And when we got to the end of the 8 pages and the job was done, and one of his friends that had a character in this little story said, "Hey, wait a minute, the dude forgot the little belts on the side of 5 star on the side of his costume." And Eric was like, "Man, don't worry about it. You've already done the job." I think I charged him like maybe $30 a page or something. Like, it was ridiculously cheap. And I was like, "No, man, it was in the sheets that you gave me. I just missed it." So I went back and fixed every panel
Oh,
on
wow.
8 pages and put that belt in, because I believe in doing a job right, even if you're only getting paid $30 a page in the beginning. And that cemented my reputation with everybody whose character was in those books. And then some of those guys went on to become some of my main, like, gold diamond level clients that have kept me fed and kept a roof over my head all through
Nice.
COVID. And like, some of these guys, we've put out like 12 books now over the last 6 years, and it just built up from there. And It's been doing the job, always doing my very best, no matter what the job's paying, no matter how difficult the client is. If the client's really difficult, they usually get better work because I'm not going to let the job suffer just because they're a jerk. And I learned that lesson a long time ago, man. You're not going to be standing over the reader's shoulder down the road saying, "Well, see, you don't understand what they weren't paying very much," or
Right.
the guy was a real douche. Nobody's going to know that. All they're going to see is this is your artwork and this is your name and that's the quality of work you do. And I can't have that be negative. So, I always try and do my best, and that just let things skyrocket. And in the last 6 years, I just worked on my 99th book the other day, and it's a crazy amount that most people can't say they've done in 6 years. But, partially my brain's not right, wired right, and my nervous system works a little differently, and it makes me really fast and really creative. And sometimes I don't walk so great, but it has its trade-offs. But man, it's been a wild ride, man.
Yeah.
99.
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit 100 books by the end of this year.
That's
That's
awesome.
nuts. I'm probably gonna hit 100 books by the end of next month.
Well, happy comics versary. And as you're talking about
Thank you.
these collaborations and the community, yeah. Anybody from the band, anybody that you want to shout out that's been instrumental, see what I did there with band, in bringing your books together. Thanks. We
Oh,
appreciate
dude,
that.
Eric N. Bennett is the guy that I owe everything to because he's the buddy that had my back in the beginning, offered me that job. He's one of the coolest letterers in indie comics. Like as a letterer myself on my own books, I'm always sending stuff back and forth to him. Like, dude, okay, something's bugging me. What can I fix here? And he does the same. And we can be honest with each other, which is something that not a lot of friends can be. And like I could be like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, you totally need to move that balloon and maybe break this one too. And he's not going to get his feelings hurt about it. He's like, oh yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you. Um,
Mhm.
Eric Bennett is the best. He's one of the most reliable, honest dudes in indie comics. Roy Johnson with the Sentinels from Standard Comics. Man, we've done so many issues of the Sentinels, Sensational Seven, and stuff together. Tony Clapper from Freestyle Comics. I've done 3 issues of Five Star with him. Man, so many books, so many awesome things. I'm working on a book right now with Greg Moquin from Sierra Nova Comics that's
Mhm.
really cool, and it's pushed me way outside of my comfort zone, having to do stuff that I've never done before, which is awesome, man. I've gotten to do anthropomorphic dinosaurs in books. I've gotten to do so much cool stuff. It's a dream come true, man. I'm getting to make a living doing indie comics, which is a thing I always wanted to do because like I said, as a kid, indie comics was where all the cool weird stuff was happening. So
Right,
that's where
right.
I wanted to be. I didn't I love Marvel, I love Spider-Man, I love Batman, I love the X-Men, but everybody wants to do that. And there's so many
Mhm.
stories that have already been told, and there's no room for me to tell my stories and my characters and the stuff I want to do. So like I've always been happy to let other people have that dream, and I've been real excited to see my friends make it there. It's just not really my destination. Like
Yeah.
I want to do indie comics. Like I am where I want to be.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
to get to pay my bills doing that is awesome. To get to pay my bills now doing my own books like Fish Tales and The Mighty Call and Green Zone Life in the Blocks and stuff, that's like winning the lottery on top of living out your childhood dream. And it's crazy. It's awesome.
Nice. If I'm a reader out there and I'm curious about what I might expect from your books, what would be sort of the pitch, the tagline there? There's the anthology approach, of course, as I mentioned, with Fishtails, but anything else that you might mention?
Um, the two big series that I've got going on are Green Zone Life in the Blocks. Issue 4 of that comes out at Christmas for my Patreon subscribers. And you can check out my Patreon, Mr. Fish Comics. It's easy to find. It's Mr. Fish Comics everywhere on social media. But on my Patreon, I have a subscription service where you can sign up for $5 a month and get digital comics, or $10 a month gets a brand new physical comic shipped to your door every month. And most of the time, it's one of my books. Occasionally, it's a client's book that they give me, extra copies to send out to the backers. Um, but it's been It's about to be the 15th month that I've been running this Patreon, and I will
Mhm.
send out the 16th book in 15 months. So I know I sounded crazy when I told people I was going to send out a book a month, but I do it. So like I might be crazy, but I'm actually pulling it off. Um, the Mighty Caw is a series that grew out of that just grew out of like I want to do something fun.
Mhm. Mhm.
The Mighty Caw is like a bloody love letter to Saturday morning cartoons. Like it kind of looks like He-Man or Thundar, but I always have to tell parents when they pick it up, I'm like, there's a lot of like heads turned the wrong way and insides on the outside. Like it's not. It looks like a cartoon. It is not. And the dude's covered in blood on the first issue. He's ripped a dude's arm off on the cover of the second issue. Like it's not it's I'd let my kids read it. You might not want to let your kids read it. Like that's up to your own personal taste. Green Zone is a series that's a lot more grounded. It follows, if it can be grounded, with an 8 foot lizard monster in it as one of the main characters, but it's in a world full of mutants where it's illegal to be born a mutant. You're obviously a supervillain waiting to happen, like you're trouble. So you lose your citizenship and your rights, you get shoved into the green zones, and you live in the blocks, which are these giant overbuilt ghettos. And so, if you want to get out and make a better life for yourself, you have to prove to the humans that you're not a threat by serving the greater good for 5 years. So, if you can make it 5 years in the military or the fire department or even sanitation, you can earn your citizenship and get out and make a better life for yourself. So, this is following a group of new recruits to the police force as they're trying to earn their citizenship and, get out and make a better life for themselves. And you have a
Yeah.
bunch of people that are really poorly equipped to be cops trying to be cops. Like Virgil's an 8 foot tall lizard monster. He looks terrifying. He's the most timid, sweetest dude in the world. He couldn't harm a fly. Like his only real ability is when he gets really terrified and his blood pressure goes up, he shoots blood out of his eyes, which is a really bad power to have, and got him his first felony charge at 5 years old. And
Oh,
so like he hates the cops, but he hates living in the blocks more. So this is his way to get out. If he gets out, he can open a little bookstore and he can hide in the back and never talk to anybody again and read books pretending to be anything other than a big scary lizard monster. That's all he wants to do. But he can't do that unless he risks his life for 5 years as a cop. So, you know, he's going to
yeah.
get out of the blocks however he can. And it's deep and gritty and has all kinds of political issues and institutional racism and all kinds of stuff in it, and it's beautiful and it's heavy, and I make my editors cry with, why are you still being so mean to Virgil? And like, sometimes life's hard and sometimes it
Yeah.
keeps being hard,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that's Virgil's lot in life, and it's beautiful and I love it. Caw is just bloody fun. Bird barbarian killing his way across the galaxy. It's Saturday morning cartoons. It's when we last saw our hero. He was captured by pirates, and now he's being hunted by the hellhounds of hyperspace, and now he's shipwrecked on a lost planet, and now he's besieged by serpent soldiers. And it's totally like the old like Flash Gordon serials at the movies. Like you get a little brief catch up of where we were last time. You have an
Hmm.
adventure, cost slaughters a bunch of monsters and stuff, and then, oh no, how is he going to survive this one? And then we pick it up again the next time, and it's so much fun. It's so cool. The neat thing about the anthology book Fish Tales is it lets me tell all the little story ideas that I want to tell that don't necessarily fit in those blocks.
Hmm.
Like the first issue had several different multiversal short stories that I had done, like one about assistant district manager of the multiverse, and Cthulhu's about to go into the public domain and he has to put an end to this before he ends up destroying the universe. And it had another story about a scientist that, built a suit to try and jump between dimensions, and now he's stuck popping around from place to place. And then it, had a short story that I started that's a combination of a story I've been working on for 30 years and an idea that just popped into my head. What if Alice was a wandering Ronin warrior in a in a multiversal landscape, this rift between worlds called Wonderland, where all these different worlds came crashing in together. And all the characters were aliens and robots and ghosts and things from other worlds. And that's why they're all so crazy and weird and, disjointed. And I ended up combining that with my idea I'd been working on for 30 years of this time traveling barbarian. And it became this epic story that's beautiful and complicated and painful and interesting and funny. And so I started it just like try it out. Just wanted to try it out, see how it looked on the page. And I started it in the first issue of Fishtails, continued it in the second issue, and it got such a huge hit from my Patreon backers because my Patreon
Uh-huh.
backers get everything first. So they got Fishtails Volume 2 months ago. It got such a huge response that Alice Lost in Wonderland has spun off into its own book now. And it's gotten a lot of great attention so far. Um, and then this second issue of Fishtails has another part of Alice in it, and then it has two stories from the world of Green Zone and the world of the Mighty Call, which was a lot of fun to do because I get to tell the other stuff that's going on without having to wait for it to fit into the narrative structure of like the way the books are going. I might
Mhm.
have to get to issue 10 of Green Zone to show you some of this stuff that's going on, or I can just be like, here's a short story that's also taking place here. And now I can have fun and tell the other stuff too, which, that's freeing. That's getting to do the fun stuff there. And
Um,
it has a short story about like a team a team of agents that fill in when the superheroes are otherwise occupied, and like if your supervillain has busted into the bank vault and is holding people hostage and is going to start killing people if Captain Atomic doesn't show up, but Captain Atomic's off planet and he can't show up, you call in the B team and they fill in while the heroes are gone. And there's a alien protomorph that can look like anybody, impersonate them perfectly, but he's a living puddle of goo, so he doesn't really have their abilities. He's just really good at impersonation. So much so he's on work release from prison to be a part of this team for identity theft because he came to Earth and was like, "Oh, I can just get anything I want by looking like these bipeds. That's awesome. Yeah, no problem." He got himself in a lot of trouble. So now
Sounds like
he's trying to earn
it.
his way out of prison now by working on this team. And then like there's a kid who's really strong, doesn't look anything like Captain Atomic. So if he steps in, he has to wear a mask and a wig and everything so that he kind of looks like him, but he can't pull that off for very long. And so, you know, it's this cool juggling act of like, who are we going to send in? What are we going to do? It's a fun story. It's co-written and illustrated by my son Baird Lee,
I
who
love it. Love
is
it.
he's 21 years old. He's just getting his feet wet doing comic book art. This was one of the first full stories that he's done that's getting published. He also got to color on Alice Lost in Wonderland, which was awesome because he grew up listening to this story and now he got to be a part of that, which is awesome. And the story from the world of the Mighty Ka shows us a little bit more about this planet that he just crash landed on before he got there.
Mhm.
And when he crash lands, he runs into this warrior Kess, who's this big, powerful, beautiful woman that's based on like an amalgamation of all my daughters and daughter-in-laws. And she's just a big, beautiful badass that takes no mess from anybody.
Mhm.
And so this story goes back before she became a warrior when she goes through this gauntlet, this crucible trial where all the clans come together and the strongest of the young, wannabe warriors survive. And it follows her on this path and it shows more about the world, more about the other clans, more about who Kess is and how she never was going to take any mess from anybody, even when she was a teenager. And it's so cool. And it was written by my buddy T.S. Luther from Can't Be Killed Comics. And he wrote Tokyo Fire that just came out. He wrote Hellion and Bash. It's fixing to go to Kickstarter soon, like in the next week or so. Uh, he he is one of the best new writers I've seen. I'm so impressed with his writing that I definitely like. I was like, dude, what can we do together, man? You want to play in my sandbox? You want to write some stuff for
Nice.
me? Like he's been editing my books for me. I lettered Hellion and Bash for him. We're going to work on the next story that he's putting out. I'm going to illustrate for him because he's been such a huge help for me. And it's just one of those lucky partnerships where you meet somebody. It's like, dude, I get you, man. We're on the same wavelength. We're headed the same direction. We like the same things. Like, you know, let's have fun together for a little while here and see where this goes. Because, man, he comes up with some of the coolest stuff, man. It's awesome. I'm super excited about this book. The
Yeah,
anthology
yeah.
is so much fun to have room to tell all the extra stories, to tell the little story ideas that I get when we're like driving back and forth to cons and I'm staring at the landscape. And I was like, ooh, what if what if you were like a settler in this place before it was all occupied and you're just out here alone, and what if you just fell into the sky? And
Mm.
like, now there's a whole nother story that I want to do in Fishtails volume 3.
Love it, love it. So it sounds like the creating is continuing, and I love the social commentary too. Um, if I want to find out more about your work, if I want to support, where are some places where I can go and do that?
Go Mr. Fish is the short link, gomrfish.com. That will always take you to the latest thing that I'm working on now, which like right now it takes you to the Kickstarter for Fishtails Volume 2. And it'll take you to the next Kickstarter, or it'll take you to my link tree. It'll always take you to the latest thing that I'm doing, Go Mr. Fish, because Go Fish was taken and they want too much money for a domain they're not using. Uh, Otherwise, it's Mr. Fish Comics everywhere, MrFishComics.com. You can buy the books, Mr. Fish Comics on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Uh, Honestly, buying the books on TikTok is about the best deal
Oh,
because
nice.
most of the time you can get free shipping and stuff on TikTok, and you don't have to, like, if TikTok's offering like free shipping on orders over 25 or $30, whatever deal they're offering now, you don't have to just order from me. You could order like, all four issues of Call, which are only I think like $10 on the shop or something, 12, something like that. And then you could order stuff from other people. Anything you order on TikTok will all be combined into that one order. So it's really a cool way to get shipping down. Like I did it one time, got free shipping and got books from like 5 different creators. It was awesome. It was
Nice.
awesome. I could never do that from all 5 of those creators and got free shipping at the same time. Couldn't have done it.
For the first time, I am tempted to be on TikTok now. So this is helpful.
I'm
Um,
telling you, man, I thought it was nuts. It's really cool. It's so informative. There's so much cool stuff on there. I've learned so much on there. It's better. It's not just dances and eating Tide Pods, which I thought it
that's good.
was.
Well, Fish, a delightful conversation, and glad to finally meet you and put a face and voice with the name. And always glad to have you back as you're working on projects, which it sounds like you will be for some time. It sounds like the creativity
Oh,
is firing.
they're just going to keep coming. The books are going to keep coming no matter what. So y'all might as well get on board now and go to gomrfish.com and check them out.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you again, and glad to have you back anytime.
Thanks, man. I loved it.